I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. And where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. We hate it, we revere it, we sometimes secretly like it, and yet we don't really understand how it works. And worse, we let it control our lives. We, the marionettes to its cosmic puppeteering. And so, let us beg today's question, how do we transcend fear? How can we, as Frank Herbert wrote, get to a place where we permit it to pass over without letting it destroy us via ill performance or stagnation? And by the way, understand that you may be afraid of spiders, snakes, scorpions, big cats, and crocodiles, the dark, heights, enclosed spaces, flying, going fast, germs, etc. But I am not your psychotherapist. If you need professional help, get professional help. Today, we'll instead teach something else. How to overcome, honestly, a more pressing fear. The one that is holding your business back. The ultimate meta fear, the fear of rejection. Because look, here's the truth. You have good reason to be afraid of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, because they can eat you. Germs will kill you. Being stuck in a cave will kill you. These fears are not accidental. We fear our predators and physical hazards because all animals biologically, instinctually fear what could kill them. And thank God they do. But since most of our lives are not spent dodging genuine predators because we live in heated houses with electricity and move around in magic cars and buy meat from the grocery stores, most of our day-to-day fears are just insecurity. But the fear of rejection is admittedly trickier. It can't be flippantly dismissed because it too is biological. Lone wolves, we are not. We are pack animals, social to the very core. Family, community, walls, territory, hierarchy, and order. We are fundamentally societal. Look no further than to our closest relatives, bonobos, chimpanzees, the great apes, who are all relentlessly community-oriented. The data is unequivocal. This societal building is as important to their and our survival as food, shelter, safety, and water, because the way we procure food, shelter, safety, and water is by amassing a collective power beyond which any individual could alone amass. Like ants, we are. Schools of small fish, a pack of lions taking down an ancient mastodon. And so banishment, excommunication, expulsion, eviction, damnation, these words strike at the very heart of our psyches because they mean, pragmatically, quite simply, death. But the problem is not that this honest fear of rejection now manifests itself not as banishment from some walled city, because in modernity, there are no walled cities, immigration, politics notwithstanding, but instead as a pink slip, a public speech, the big sale, an interview, a first date, a tough client call, a quarterly report, a yearly review, a meeting with the board, a firing of an executive, dancing in front of strangers, going to the gym, opening a store, pitching your new idea, speaking to those investors, turning on the camera and posting to social media, hiring that virtual assistant, hiring that agency, putting your money on the line, doing it despite your family's doubts, learning a new software from scratch. Here, taste this. What do you think? The new chef asks. See, our present lives are not fatally dangerous most of the time, though they may feel like they are, more so even than would an average gorilla's life. Because rather than a tiger meandering in once a month, we're constantly and obsessively and daily bombarded with a series of social tests. It's relentless. Did I say that right? What was she thinking? Is he mad at me? Did I look stupid there? I should have said it differently, right? They're angry. I didn't do it right. I should have been better. Oh no, they didn't like it. They don't like me. I am unliked. I am not good enough. I am alone, banished. This is a daily, hourly, probably even minute by minute occurrence for all of us. And for many, it's paralyzing. And so when compounded, when gathered into its mass proportion, this constant pinpricking of social anxiety often manifests itself into a depressive, stagnant, dishearteningly unpowerful and unfulfilled life. Even so, and especially I would argue for high-level entrepreneurs. Billie Jean King's famous quote, "Pressure is a privilege," that's wonderful, but it's easier said than felt. Entrepreneurship is lonely. The man in the arena, all eyes on me. The pressure is unrelenting. The fear never ending. And yet, it is what it is. Ultimately, that's the game. A tennis match. You against your own fears over and over again. The crowd of your own mind roaring, stomping in the stands, chanting, asking, will you face your fear of social rejection daily, putting yourself out there daily, vulnerable for all to see, in an all too important quest with ever increasing stakes to become the person you know you are and your community deserves? Or shall you cower in the comforts of playing it safe? That is the question. Question without an easy answer. It's not easy. It's not simple. It's not. Because if you play it safe, if you clock in and clock out, if you do not bet on yourself, if you never make that investment, if you don't hire that help, if you don't fire the team member holding you back, if you don't finish the website, if you don't start marketing the product, if you never ask that person out, if you're too much of a coward to say I love you, if you play the song the same way every time, you will probably survive. You will. But we will be worse off for it. See, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yes, but the whole, in order to be an effective whole, also requires that its parts function correctly. Innovation, definitionally, demands a pushing past beyond what is known. Carl Jung called this our shadow selves. Joseph Campbell, A Hero's Trials. And so, this is necessarily the challenge of fear. Will you dive into the great unknown, where fear lives and worships, or will you play it safe? This is the question of our life. And the reason I ask this question is because before I give you the answer for how to effectively and systematically attack these fears step by step, in order to reach your fullest potential, whatever that is, I need you to understand the stakes. I need you to literally, out loud if necessary, or write it down, answer the notebook question, what do you want? Do you want to play it safe, or do you want to venture into the unknown? Because if you want to play it safe, and this is true by the way, then you and fear should be fast friends. Listen to her, pay attention to her, let her be your compass. Do everything she says and avoid everything she says to avoid. It's easy, it's nice, it's simple, it's safe. Relax, don't fret, just do the safe thing, it's fine. Stay inside her comfy, albeit sometimes existentially draining walls until the end. Easy peasy, then you die. Though, if you are here to push some needle, any needle, if you feel it, you know it, you are called upon to explore it. If you are here for a greater vocation than to not die, then come with me, because there is a way out. And here it is, by the way, the way out. There are basically 5 steps. Step 1, when you're facing a fear, identify a specific fear to attack. Overcoming fear as a monolith is impractical. Then step 2, kill your ego, as in realize that you are the only person that matters in defining yourself. Build a force field around yourself so that no person is able to define you on behalf of you. Then step 3, you need to see vulnerability as a positive. Then 4, conduct a worst case scenario audit to convince your brain that it's actually logical to step into fear. Then step 5, do the work. Test your boundaries in order to move them outward. This will build up a calloused muscle memory, a benevolent tolerance for the unknown. Great, now let's get into the weeds. First, you need to get specific. You have to drill into one very exact fear in order to kill it. Pick a target. Social anxiety when speaking to my investors is better than social anxiety in general, sure. But even better is pitching my idea for expanding our product line for next quarter to our board members next Monday's meeting. This fear we can work with. Yes, the psychological truth is that the reason you're afraid of pitching your new idea is because you're afraid of being kicked out of the tribe, judged, made fun of, seen as stupid or insignificant, banished. Again, yeah, that may be true, but I promise it'll be much easier to address the problem if you pick an honest to God use case. Not hitting your sales KPIs, have a review coming up, finally asking her to marry you. No matter the case, you need a specific case. For me, as a personal example, my latest specific fear is being too firm at our next leadership meeting, such that I hurt our company morale and I hurt our company culture. My team, I'm sure, I hope would argue this. As a leader, I'm more of a motivator than a dictator. I give long leashes, doing all of my micromanagement during the hiring process. And I assume, therefore, that my highly competent team will continuously go above and beyond without my constant pressure. This fundamentally, I believe, is the right way to manage people. But since Virtual Worker now is growing so fast and with no end in sight, we're doubling down on creating very specific discipline-oriented systems to help us effectively and seamlessly scale. Less a startup and more a corporate. This transition is not simple. As such, I've recently had to be much more firm about expectations than I used to be. And I often go over the edge into dangerous territory. This yin to my normal yang of leadership is both uncomfortable and necessary. It's a delicate balance, a difficult dance. And as such, I fear screwing it up. I do. How can I set clear boundaries and expectations without being mean, without hurting the morale of the team that I know works their asses off? Not walking this tightrope correctly, it terrifies me. If I'm too tough, the team crumbles. Or if I'm too soft, the team will eventually crumble anyways. So that's my step 1. That's my get specific. That's what I'm afraid of. But what's yours? Once you establish your fear that you're attacking, you then need to, step 2, attack the fear on a spiritual level by shattering your ego. And look, I realize that this is going to get intense and deep, but if you're still listening to this, then my guess is that you're probably almost fundamentally anti-surface level. So I'm also sure that you can take this. I'm sure you can handle it, because here's the thing. You, if you've ever meditated, this is the you who observes yourself. This capital Y you. There is no there. I've said this before in a previous lesson, but it's worth repeating. There is no I am or I am not that you don't literally create and decide upon. Sure, there are some biological differences between all of us, of course, but the deep down the rabbit hole you is untouchable. It is so fundamental, so atomic, so much greater than any momentary flash of someone else's egoic judgment that it's honestly comical how much we care about what other people think. Let's take me for an example, just to keep it personal and vulnerable. In my life, I have been called an easy boss. I've been called overly confident. I've been called brash and rude. I've been called kind and too forgiving. Different members of my own team at different times, in fact, have told me on on separate occasions that I'm too nice and that I'm also too mean. I let people get away with murder and I'm callous and I'm brutal. I've been told that I'm too sharp and aggressive and that I'm not firm enough on deadlines. In fact, this has all happened in the past few months. It happens all the time. And what's crazier, I have read all of the books. I've hired over 1,000 people. I've had conversations with the world's best leadership experts, applying their lessons to my own team. And even so, I'm obviously not perfect. And guess what? I never will be, and neither will you. The case that you're scared of, you very well may screw it up. You may be called too aggressive, too nonchalant, too confident, too chill, that you emphasized the wrong point, that you were too chatty, too quiet, unprepared, you fucked it up. And guess what? They might be right, or they might be wrong. Because guess what? It all depends. I like chocolate, you like strawberry, then I like strawberry and you like chocolate. In general, there is a direction of the right way. And yes, there's usually a way to perform optimally given the right circumstances. But you will also, and this is an important point, never win every social battle because every person's specific tastes are going to be different. Therefore, what's the use in worrying? And more, how in the world does it make any sense to let anyone define you or who you are? Can I actually be both overly confident and too passive? Sure, maybe, depending upon the time and the place. So what does that say? It says that I am varied, complicated, ever-evolving, metaphysically, spiritually, and undeniably, I am. As Walt Whitman pontificates, do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. My superpower then, and maybe yours too, malleability. No matter if I screw up next Monday's all hands or not, no matter if they all gang up on me because I'm too whatever, no matter, because only I define me. Only I know if my heart was there. Only I know if I had ethical intentions. Only I know if I did my best. Only I know if I had benevolent. Only I know if I wanted to be benevolent. Only I know if I prepared. And as such, no specific outcome of any specific event will hold any power against the great force field of my own purpose. If they say I was bad, so be it. Maybe I was. But it doesn't mean I am bad. If they say I was good, so be it. Maybe I was good. But it doesn't mean I am good. The me, the deep me, is untouchable. Because listen, my friends, if you are going to do great by this world, you'll have to do it because of and with the world. Yes, but also sometimes in spite of it, which leads to step 3. Learn to love vulnerability. Vulnerability is the way. Sorry, Ryan Holiday, because I completely ripped you off there, but it is true. Just as powerful as the obstacle is the way. When it comes to fear, vulnerability is also the way. And I know, this is hard. Being vulnerable is vulnerable. By definition, it's fear-inducing, it's emotionally draining, but you have to run towards it like the best chocolate cake you've ever had. You have to love vulnerability. You have to desire it, want it, need it. Because if you do this, you will, without even thinking about it, by default, naturally step into the things you most fear. It's counterintuitive, but if you want to be more emotionally engaged with people, if you want to build a stronger tribe, if you want to solidify your belonging, you must open up to that tribe. Honestly, in this case, vulnerability is the glue which binds you with those whom you love. I mean, think about it. When someone opens up to you, let's say they're crying, do you shrink up into yourself? No. Do you respect them less? No. Usually more. Do you run away? No. You run towards them. It's funny then how our instincts only flow in one direction. Whenever someone is honest and vulnerable with us, we feel closer to them and we love them even more. And yet when it's our turn to be vulnerable, we cower, assuming everyone's going to point out all of our flaws and laugh at us like we're in the schoolyard. But as Brene Brown puts it, true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance. So long story short, if you want to overcome your fears, you have to practice vulnerability and build the muscle memory of acceptance that comes with it. This alone, even if this step 3 alone is usually powerful enough to kill most fears. But next up, let's convince your prefrontal cortex now. Step 4, it's time to have a conversation with your brain. As Mo Gaudat, Chief Business Officer at Google X, suggests, sometimes you have to say, brain, I'd like a new thought, thank you. Sometimes you need to reason with yourself. In this case, it's by using a decision tool called regret minimization. This sounds fancy, but it's really quite easy. All you have to do is write down the worst and best case scenario for each outcome. Let's use hiring an agency or an executive as an example. Business owners constantly hold their companies back because they're too prissy with their investments. They trip over dollars in order to pick up pennies. It happens all the time. So let's say, as an example, you have a B2B product and you're not on LinkedIn. You know intuitively, logically, and factually that literally all of your avatar buyers are on LinkedIn. And you know there are companies that crush it on LinkedIn for lead generation, but you're too afraid to pull the trigger. You think it won't work. You tried it before. You're worried about your so-called reputation. You're worried about being salesy. Whatever your brain is telling you as its garbage, self-protecting, fear-induced excuse, let's play the game out. Maybe you're right. What's the worst case scenario here? You hire an agency, for a few $1,000s to do some LinkedIn content and outreach to your best case scenario clients. If you're smart and asking for proof of results and testimonials and you have a decent offer before you hire that agency, what's the worst that could happen? You don't make a sale, but you probably got at least a few solid conversations. You learned why people are not buying, and you learned what doesn't work. And you're out, let's say, 15K. If you're a real business and you're not willing to take 15K bets that could potentially change your life forever, then you're not serious about your business. The worst case scenario is a joke. It's not ideal, but it's not really all that earth-shattering either, right? But what's the best case scenario? You make a few sales every month, which leads to referrals, which leads to testimonials, which leads to a positive feedback loop. And now you're crushing LinkedIn at scale. Now you don't need to pay the Zuckerberg gods. And instead, a year later, clients are coming to you because you're now a leader in your space. Pros versus cons, it's not even a contest. And yet, there you are, afraid. So how do you overcome this? You need to write down the worst and the best case scenarios if you face your fear. Literally do it. And most of the time, what you're afraid of is something like, I'll lose some money, or she says no and it's awkward for a bit, or someone says something mean to me, or the lead tells me that my product sucks, or my coach tells me how to do it better next time, or I didn't make the sale, or my videos didn't get very many views for a while and it makes me feel bad, or something equally as trite. It feels intense in the moment, but it doesn't really matter. In fact, decision theory specialist and poker champion Annie Duke says it this way: if you don't think you'll remember the consequences of the moment in 10 years from now, it's not worth worrying about. So what are you afraid of again? What's the worst that can happen? Will you remember in 10 years? No, probably not. Then just do it, which leads us to step 5, get to it. Or as Jocko Willink says, a US Navy SEAL and #1 New York Times bestselling author, action cures fear. As in practice, as in do it, as in face it, as in stop being weak and just do it. Staring at the cold water is often worse than jumping in. Now granted, this doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare. This doesn't mean you shouldn't think about it a bit beforehand. Ask yourself legitimate questions and then answer those questions. What are the best ways to approach this? How can I make sure that I learn something even if it doesn't go well? How can I set myself up for success? How can I practice before the big day, event, pitch, meeting, performance? Don't be silly, obviously prepare. But also, as Nike says, just do it. Because if you do, especially after going through the first 4 steps, you'll realize that all along, your fears were completely unwarranted. You gotta rip the Band-Aid. The worst case scenario will probably not happen. Your vulnerability will be respected. Your ego may take a temporary bruised hit, but you'll also realize that there you still are, standing tall despite the hit, stronger for it. And then, here's the good part, you'll learn something. Namely, and most importantly, that the next time you'll be that much better. You'll learn that your next fear is also conquerable. That, wow, this method actually worked. And then you'll do it again and again and again and again. But then eventually, you'll not only realize, but know that fear is a phantom. It's obsolete. In fact, you'll learn to love it. You'll see it as a guiding light, as an X marks the spot. Because here's the thing, if you want to accomplish anything great in your life, and I know you do, then you are going to have to relentlessly push your boundaries. You'll have to expand your comfort zone out way past everyone else, which means that along the way, you're going to have to face your fears over and over and over and over. Fear then is a stepping stone. Fear now as a series of lily pads. Fear now as your map. Fear now as your friend. Because let's get serious. You owe it to yourself, your family, and to your entire collective society to get past these fears. Because we need you. We all need you to step it up. I'll try to do my part, and I hope you do yours. Welcome to the club. Hope that helped. Cheers. Thanks for listening.